Climate Justice Y'all, a podcast dedicated to lifting up and centering the climate and environmental justice movement in the South. Despite the South being the most biodiverse, diverse, and one of the largest economic engines in the world, we are underfunded and often barred from the decision-making table. Because of that, we decided to pull up a chair and amplify the stories of communities in the South that are hit the hardest by the climate crisis.
We're using good old-fashioned storytelling to shine a spotlight on these Southern leaders from all walks of life, putting in their blood, sweat, and tears to transform the region. The usage of y'all in the title is on purpose. We are honoring our Southern heritage of creativity, resilience, and ingenuity. Climate justice, y'all. It's real, it's here, and it's about time y'all hear what we have to say.
Perfect. Yay. Okay, great. Well, hey, y'all. Hey, listeners, y'all are going to be thrilled about who we brought today because honestly, this is something you can do in your backyard. And I'm really excited for y'all to hear about it. So Cicada Calling Farm, could y'all introduce yourselves, who y'all are? What is this farm? Why'd y'all start it? How'd you get passionate? I'm just throwing all the questions at you, but tell us about yourself.
Great. Hi, I'm Becks and I'm Sierra. And we co-own together Cicada Calling Farm in Independence, Louisiana, which is an hour away from New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Yeah, we're a 2-acre diversified vegetable and cut flower farm. 2 acres seems like a lot, but compared to a lot of farms, that's pretty small. And we grow everything from melons to greens to garlic to hot peppers. We grow a lot of hot peppers. We grow like a lot of flowers too, probably half and half. Yeah, we feel like the flowers sort of support our veggie efforts. And we're in our second year farming, which is really exciting. So this is our second summer season. And yeah, it's great to be a farmer in the South.
I like that little clap.
Yeah, it's a clap. We're both, Becks and I are both from Louisiana. We had to leave for a little while to learn how to farm. And then, we just came back in the past 5 or 6 years to kind of start this adventure. And yeah, it's been a ride. It's been really exciting and did not know that we were going to come back and start a farm, but the opportunities kind of just fell into place. And here we are. Yeah, Sierra and I met through a friend who works in climate justice, who is like an anchor in the community. And when she introduced us, there was already a lot in common within our like family settings, and that we're both from here, but we had to move away, like Sierra said, to go learn how to farm and study agriculture, not in Louisiana. And then, when we got connected, started talking about farming, it was a mutual thing that we could see ourselves doing for the rest of our lives. And so that really was a sweet moment that we figured out that who else would want to be this wild and do something so hard? But here we are.
Perfect. And I want to follow up and ask y'all, why did y'all start a farm? Because obviously it's like I would say half of like, at least my TikTok algorithm is going off like this. It seems like everybody wants to start a farm, but like, you know what I mean? But why did y'all do it? And especially since farming is really, really hard work, why did y'all start this?
I feel like every farmer will tell you, like, if you're like, hey, I've been thinking about starting a farm, they'll all be like, don't do it. Only because it's just so hard. It takes a very special kind of person and mentality to accomplish this. But anyway, I'm really joking about that. When I went to school in UMass Amherst in Massachusetts for sustainable agriculture. I grew up gardening with my mom a lot, and we never had like a nice house, but my mom always found a way to transform whatever rental we had at the time, transform the garden into this beautiful like sanctuary. And so that's something that kind of felt like home to me, like farming and gardening and going out to the backyard to pick flowers or carrots or whatever else. And she used to joke with me, like, when you become a doctor or get rich one day, you're going to buy me a farm. when I went to school for ag, I never thought like, I'm going to start a farm one day, because there are so many barriers to getting into farming. And that's probably why there are so few farmers and so few farmers in the South. But some pieces aligned, where I was approached about this land opportunity in Independence, the place we farm now. And the landowner wanted to lease land to some young farmers and basically help young farmers get started, because he grew up in the area farming, and basically was trying to save land from being turned into development, and wanted it to be used for farming. And so when I was approached by that opportunity, I was like, who is crazy enough to actually want to do this with me? And sadly, there's not like I couldn't really like think of a lot of people, just because it's, like I said, there's so many barriers. There's like in the South compared to like, so I went to school in the Northeast, and Becks can tell you a little bit more about going to school in California, but there's farms everywhere, like small scale farms. But here, there's very few. And so there's very few opportunities to learn about farming and to get the experience required and necessary to start your own farm. There's a lot of large scale farms here, but not a lot of farms doing regenerative agriculture or organic agriculture, or community-based agriculture. And so when I was given this opportunity, I thought back to a conversation that Becks and I had, where Becks had just moved back home and was just kind of really expressing to me that like, it really sucks coming back home, like wanting to be in a place that you love and invest in for the future, but there's so few opportunity here. And when Becks told me that, I felt that resonated with me, because there are so few opportunities to farm. And I was like, well, the only other crazy person I know who'd be down to, or I don't know, I think that was like that moment, like that connected us. And I just called Becks. I was like, you want to do this? That's kind of why or how we got started. But yeah, maybe you want to talk about what brought you into farming.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Baton Rouge, and I grew up with my grandmother sort of being my mom and my dad. So she was like the cook, the handyman, the soother, the person that nursed you back to health, everything. She also just never cooked anything that wasn't Southern. Like we really never had like a night where we would go out to eat at like a Mexican restaurant, or there was really just gumbo, red beans and rice, jambalaya, chicken and dumplings. So I didn't really grow up eating healthy per se. I didn't have like an avocado or really eat a salad until I was like, I guess in my late teens, maybe like 18. It was a weird journey with food when I was a kid. So when I moved to California for college, I did not think I was going to study anything near farming. That was not on my brain. I was doing fine arts. But then I took one of those fun college classes called human geography. And my professor, who later bought a farm in Minnesota where I co-managed that farm, called Good Courage Farm in Hutchinson, Minnesota. She kind of recruited me and brought me into her office and said, I see that you have a spark for agriculture and systems and like environmental racism. And I want you to really think about like, that you have this perspective that you can kind of share and grow, and maybe it'll give you some more purpose. And you can still use art. Like art isn't everything. So I decided to become a geography major, which entailed studying agriculture. But you unfortunately don't really learn how to farm like we're farming. That's something that I think that you have to teach yourself, and we've taught ourselves every day. I mean, we learn every moment of the day. It's been sweet.
I would say, going back to the question of why did we start this farm? I would say like ideally, at least for me, and maybe you can say whether you feel this way too. Ideally at this age, I would not have wanted to start my own farm. Like I would much have preferred to come home and be able to like train at other farms, train with other farms or work under other farms and, build up to that moment. But there's so few opportunities for that here. And there's so few safe spaces too, where like Becks and I can feel comfortable being ourselves and being who we are, and be safe, like practicing a form of agriculture that we believe in. And so in a way, for me at least, it didn't feel like a choice. I mean, everything's a choice, but it really felt like a calling, like less like a choice and more like a calling, which is kind of one reason we picked the name Cicada Calling. Farming felt like a coming home to us. And yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about that. Yeah. And some of the other questions.
Yeah. And first of all, y'all may not have eaten good or healthy, but y'all ate some southern food.
I remember moving to California and being like, wow, that's a lot of green in this dish. What is this stuff? Ooh, there's no butter in it? What?
I literally relate so deeply because that's the kind of food I grew up on personally. And so, yeah. But anyway, I'm going to pass this to Maréshah because I know she's literally on the edge of her seat and I have questions, but I'll pass it to Maréshah.
Literally, Abby, you know me so well. But, first I want to congratulate you all on your 2 years. Like that's a lot. As you all know, or as you all have stated, that's a lot of hard work, dedication, passion, blood, sweat, and tears put into pretty much starting your own baby, if you will. What are some of the things that y'all are doing to combat climate change? What are in y'all methods? What are some of the problems y'all are addressing that comes with climate change, like something like food sovereignty, or are there any problems that you all are addressing in your community?
Yeah, I would say that you can spend all the time reading books or going to school, taking classes to learn about agriculture, but until you're out into in the fields and observing your climate, your little ecosystem and really learning how to farm with your climate, that's where the real magic or whatever, that's where you really learn how to farm. And I would say we have a really intense climate just in general, even beyond climate change. When I was growing up, people would always say we have a 12-month growing season. So in other states, where places get cold, you have 6 months or 8 months or something like that. And then you have a down period. But because we are so warm all times of year, you can really grow pretty much, although the climate is changing that, 12 months out of the year. And we've that in itself brings its own challenges, the heat, and the intense rain. We're basically in the tropics, being in Southeast Louisiana. And so we get so much rain. I mean, not just rain, I'm talking about torrential downpour. You want to run inside and lock all your door, I don't know, just so much rain. And so, that in itself is already challenging. Over the past couple of years, the climate has been shifting in a lot of unpredictable ways. We have more frequent hurricanes that go later into our season. So generally we would see hurricanes from, I don't know, June, what is the start date? Is it May or June? Something like that.
Yeah, May.
To August would be the peak of hurricane season, which for us is our down season because it's so freaking hot and raining so much. But now hurricane season is kind of going later into the fall. And so 2 or 3 years ago, we experienced Hurricane Ida. We weren't farming at that time. We were about to start farming, which I'm really glad we didn't. But it was in the fall. The hurricane hit in the fall and totally destroyed a ton of farms, fall transplants. And so, that's kind of a big issue that we're currently experiencing is hurricanes are not only disrupting our ability to plant crops, but also disrupting our communities. Because, obviously if we can't, if people can't even get into the city or there's not electricity, there's no way to sell even if we had stuff. So that's something that has always been a part of our lives, living here. And now that we're farming we're way more aware of the weather. But I would say the more frequency and the later into the season, it's not really dependable to say you can expect hurricanes this time anymore. And another climate phenomena that we're having a lot of trouble in the past couple of years is tornado season. That's been a huge issue, and it feels scarier than hurricanes, when you say.
Yeah, I mean, we in our conversations when we're prepping for hurricane season, we can kind of have a plan. We can have people on call to help us take the greenhouse plastic off or help us pack up. But with tornadoes, they're shifting much closer to where we are, and they're just more frequent and more powerful. And that happens within a few hours. And so when we're thinking about long-term stability, I mean, that just throws a wrench in a lot of our plans. So we do have to kind of be on our feet all the time.
Yeah, I mean, like the tornadoes, the hurricanes, you'll know like at least a week in advance. And so like Becks said, we could have a plan of action, which no matter what, it sucks, you know, to potentially lose all your crops and things like that. But a tornado, like it could be literally minutes of you knowing that a tornado is coming. And that's what it was like all winter and spring, not all of spring, but like this year, it kind of felt like a lot of the tornadoes. And I'm talking about like every week, not just like, you know, once a month or something. It felt like every week. I remember getting home from work one day and it started raining, and my mom like calls me really stressed saying like, Sierra, are you inside? Are you inside? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're in a tornado watch area. Like that's how, if you're not like on the news or like have like, you know, checking your phone or whatever, I was like, what the hell? And even in New Orleans, so tornadoes are like north of us, like North Louisiana, I would say, like kind of like Arkansas, that whole area, that's more common. But even hurricanes coming into New Orleans, like we had some crazy tornadoes in the past 2 years that went in the same area, like hit land in the middle of the city. I remember hiding in the closet last this year, just in the city. So that's something that we're also I'm sure you guys experienced that. Maybe y'all have more experience with that in Alabama, but for us, like, you know, we're mostly used to hurricanes. Now we're like, shit, how can you prepare in a couple minutes, you know? And there's not really anything you can do to prepare for something like that. It's just really scary. And some things that we think about, like when we think about like farming and climate change, is just like how can we farm in a way that, even though we're such a small part of like a bigger climate issue, like, you know, climate world, how can we make our little ecosystem beneficial to like this bigger picture? And so we really try to focus on regenerative farming practices. We do no-tills or minimal tillage. So we have to raise our bed for drainage because we have so much water all the time. But we don't till like in the center of our beds, and that just, the more you till, there's a whole soil community, just to break it down a little bit more, but there's a whole community that lives like in the soil. Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, no, and I love that you're going into this, and we can relate deeply to the tornadoes. So y'all keep
Yes, I can't tell you how many times I've been caught in a tornado watch, whether it was in school, at home, and it's always been pretty frightening, especially because you could see the winds, you could like even the change in the weather. Usually it lets you know, like when you country, you know the change in the weather, you know the signs of any storm that's pretty much coming in and into your community, I would say. And I think y'all are wonderful people. I just want to put that out there. Y'all are wonderful, and I want to give y'all praises while y'all are here with us, because the things that y'all are doing are very moving, and it speaks to who y'all are while y'all do what y'all do. It's amazing, and I just want to thank y'all.
Aw, thank you so much. That means a lot to hear.
But now let's be nerds and hear about the soil. And all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the whole idea of like, you know, how can you like have contribute positive energy to this situation? And so, you know, it's a small, like what we're doing with the soil and how we're planting is like such a small, obviously, piece in this bigger picture. But we definitely believe that it's just as important. And so, we do a lot of we don't do a lot of tilling, so they call it no-till. And basically there's a whole community of microbes and fungi and worms and insects and all that good stuff, roots and all that living stuff happening in the soil. And so every time you bring heavy machinery and break all that up, you're destroying that ecosystem. And so a lot of those microbes and all those other beneficial things are helping convert nutrients that aren't available to the plants into something that are available to the plants. And obviously, worms are really beneficial. And every time you till, you destroy that whole community. And we don't want to we're already away so many nutrients and so much energy from the soil when we bring a piece of produce away from the farm, onto your table. And so we really believe in feeding that soil back and not destroying it. And so we don't till, we use a lot of cover crops, which is basically that you don't harvest. There's specific ones that fix nitrogen or are beneficial in this way for the soil or that way. And so we grow those crops in our down seasons or in transitional seasons to feed the soil and to give back to that soil. So that's another way that we are trying to shape the way or change the way that farmers are stewarding the land in a way that's more positive for our climate. What else for climate change? We source our seeds from southern seed growers, which is really important to us when we're working with restaurants or we're working with our customers when they see something that's a little weird or they're not used to this kind of okra or this color melon or something like that. We kind of have to educate people that not everything grows everywhere, that's okay because we're not all learning this in school. So it's just a great thing to support local seed growers and seed starters. And we're also finally starting to save our own seed, which is really important to us to sort of explore and kind of like be self-sufficient and close the loop on seeds, because it can be one of the biggest costs of the entire season for us. Yeah. We can spend $2,000 to $3,000 on seeds, which is pretty wild. Yeah, and I would just follow up with that and say that seed saving was such an essential part of our community, of just communities in general, and helping build the biodiversity of plants that we that we have in our region, and that is, we see that as one way. Like small, obviously all these are small, but way that we can adapt to climate changes to grow varieties that are more, more adapted to our climate and can take the heat, can take the rain, and continue build that biodiversity. So Becks mentioned we started saving our seeds, which is pretty exciting, and we don't do a lot.
We also get seeds from other farmers. Like we have a really sweet. He's been farming for like so long, like decades. He was doing a lot of flowers, and then just with age, flower cutting, making bouquets, it can be really hard on your body, on your wrists. So we started just doing sunflowers, but the other market in Baton Rouge, he dropped off this little plastic Ziploc bag of 5th generation celosia seeds that he's been saving and his family's been saving. And hey, here's this seed that we've been preserving and that you can carry on. And that was one of the most special times in the last 2 years, I think. It really is. It's kind of like how women in the long history of humans have been like the secret keepers or like the keepers of knowledge. And I think with seeds, I think that's pretty similar. It's like when you're keeping your seeds and you're saving those varieties and you're noticing what works, you're keeping knowledge within the family. Definitely. Yeah.
I see Maréshah's hands up, so I'm just going to pass it to her.
Perfect. So you all call yourself like a small scale farm. Can you all speak to what that is? 2, what are like the disadvantages and even advantages in building and maintaining a small scale farm while trying to create sustainable living in your community?
Yeah, and can I also add, I know when we say, y'all, when we prep these folks for these conversations and interviews, we're like, here are the questions. Here you go. There's only 5, but then Maréshah and I keep adding like 10 other questions in there. But so on top of why is small scale farming important? Like, what are the advantages and disadvantages? I want to know what normal folks, especially poor folks, especially folks that don't have time, like, can they do something similar to this? Because I do want to point that even though y'all said that this is so small, I think it being small is kind of its strength a little bit, because like it can be replicated and it's attainable for folks. And if you're honoring the ecosystem and loving your mother, include the mother being Earth, and showing your love, I think that's a win no matter what. And I think people want to show their love the same way. So I just want to add that too. Like, is there something, are small scale farms or anything like it attainable for folks? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, great questions. Wow. So for us, a small scale farm is, there's a description or a definition that you can find in an ag school. It's less than so many acres. But to us, it's producing a certain amount of crop that we're able to just have it be a small team. We're keeping it out of, I guess, that's a good question. Yeah, we have one small tractor. We don't use a lot of machinery.
But it's not a tractor that you sit on.
It's like it's called a BCS. It's an Italian tractor that just one person operates that you push, and you can get different cool implements for it. But it's like the perfect tractor for a few acres, or it does a lot. So for us, that's important to have tools that fit our size. So 2 acres, we have about, I think we've had 6 100 by 80 foot fields in production. So I guess when you imagine a football field, you can sort of compare. Hopefully by this year, we'll have all 8 of them in production. So small scale, I think it's kind of relative to what you're growing. So we're doing a lot of diverse crops. So instead of having one field of broccoli, we're doing 2 rows of broccoli in a field, and maybe some arugula, kale, maybe we're doing cabbage. So it's really, we're not doing like massive fields of one crop, because we're flipping beds. We're making sure that the soil is not getting drained of a certain nutrition quality that one plant or one vegetable take from it. So it's a lot of planning, and it can be, it can be tricky to have a small scale farm. Sometimes it's easier. I mean, that's why monocropping is such a unfortunate success, is because it is easy to have a giant tractor, to have seeds that you are chemically treated, GMO quality, and to just, that they're going to produce. And they don't always produce, but
I'll just add to that too, that like Becks said, we for the first year and a half, we're the only people working on our farm. So we did everything. And most of the things that we do, we don't do with machinery. We do by hand. And so that's another kind of like characteristic of us versus like a larger farm. And it's hard. Like we spend, at least 8 hours, but more in the 10 to 15 hours a day, because there's just that much work to do. And a lot of, now we have a part-time employee. We got an intern. We got a grant through Sprout NOLA, which is an amazing like farmer support organization in New Orleans, to hire on somebody for 3 months. And so that allowed us to get our first employee and intern, and now we have another person. So we have 1 extra person right now on our team who comes twice a week, which is just like really awesome, because not only are we able to like give other people like in Louisiana or from Louisiana experience on how to farm and show them that it's possible, but we get to create another job for our community. But a lot of other bigger farms, especially even farms that people would consider small scale, like who sell at the farmers market, use a lot of migrant labor. That's a huge thing in the South. And that's definitely not talked about enough in our community and just in farming in general. The amount of migrant labor that goes into even quote unquote small farms that are 100 acres and they consider themselves a small farm. And compared to like 3,000 acres, that is a small, 100 acres is very small. But
we want to clarify that it's not a negative thing to have migrant labor. Obviously, like, it's important to provide opportunities. It's just the way the program is run is not always, there's a lot of loopholes. There's a lot of gaps that don't have protection. So
it doesn't feel like there have been farms that I visited in our area where like the people who come up for a season to work on these farms are like family, like they've been coming since they were teenagers or whatever, and now they have families and they come up every season. So there are situations where like there are beneficial relationships, but a lot of time it's very much like we're using you for this period of time, and a lot of times the farms don't even speak the language of the workers. And so there's just like there's a lot of things to talk about there. We don't have to, like Beck said, it's not like always a negative thing, but a lot of farms in our community have labor that, I think the system could definitely be designed better. And
it kind of plays a part into pricing for us. So we usually base our pricing on what other farms are doing and then what we need to make in order to support ourselves and our farm, which is a lot of budgeting and a lot of number crunching. So when we talk to our customers at the farmers market about why are our carrots $5.50 a pound? Why is our melon $6? It can be a tricky conversation because what they're basing it off of is these farms that have migrant labor that aren't paying their employees high enough. And, you don't make a lot of money in farming anyways, but there's that gap where it's just us two. And we're doing everything from starting the seed, from ordering the soil and starting the seed all the way up into post-harvest, which is getting it to the market. And in order for us to do that and to keep showing up and having diversified crops and offering people this product and this community, we need to charge a certain price. And so that kind of plays into, we do have to explain a little bit deeper as to why we charge a certain way. So I would say that's one of those negatives about farming is that you do butt up against pricing and capitalism in general, and it can be exhausting.
Yeah, especially like when we're just busting our asses out in the fields in this 100-degree weather. Like we're out there. Like when there's like a heat wave for 3 weeks and a drought for like 3 months, we're still out there working. And so like when I think about like picking up a crate of cucumbers that we harvested in the field in the 100-degree weather and it's like 60 pounds, like I'm hurting my body doing this. Like, why would I ever charge $2 a pound or something like that? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And a lot of the reasons why that price is so low is because the people, like these bigger farms aren't the ones picking it, they're not experiencing that, so that's kind of like another aspect of it too, is that it's just really, really hard work. And, like Becks said, we're not trying to make it inaccessible or anything like that, but we have to like also be like, this is, we have to make enough money to like buy more supplies and then also like, feed ourselves. And so, yeah.
Well, something I just want to point out is, we're talking about the pricing and everything, and I completely agree. Absolutely. Something that I think folks need to understand and realize is one, all fresh food is about to be expensive, no matter if they use harsh or if they mistreat their workers. It's all going to be expensive. I mean, it's getting to the point, especially with climate change, that a lot of, even the big old farms are losing like 90% of their crops. And People are like, oh, why is this orange or why are these peaches $10? I'm like, girl, didn't you know that 90% of the peaches were gone?
Yeah.
And I just learned, like, this past weekend, and we're filming this in July, but I just learned that my community, who's home to a lot of small farms and large farms, most of their crops didn't grow this year. And that is a huge hit for the community I grew up in. And so I kind of just don't, when people talk about expensive, yes, obviously fresh food needs to be affordable for everyone. And we need to work to make that happen while also honoring the hard work of the people who made that food or helped steward that food. Let's be clear. The earth is making the food. The earth has done this for millions of years, but for the stewards of that food. So I just had to make that comment because, to me, this is why small scale farming is important. And this is why farms at the community level are important, because when these systems fail, we need to have local folks in place doing this. So sorry to get on my soapbox, but I'm getting off it now.
No, yeah, it's great soapbox. Love it. Very good.
Thank you. But so what I'm hearing, I was hearing the disadvantages. Before we move on to the next question, and I think this actually could tie to the next question, because I want to know, one, is there a regional farm network that's doing things? Are y'all working together on this? Because it seems like on top of climate change, on top of fighting for the land y'all have from big companies taking it, from seed sharing even, and stuff like that. Is there a network that exists? Is that important? Am I crazy for even saying that? And also, if y'all could explain a little bit more about the advantages of the work you do, that'd be really great.
Yeah, I can start off with advantages, and then we can get more into our cute, beautiful little farming community here in Southeast Louisiana. There are so many advantages. I know Sierra and I talk a lot about the hardships, the days where we just can't show up, or it's hot and we're changing our shirt 3 times, but there are so many advantages. I think one recently that's really come to light now that I hit our 2-year mark is just providing for our own families. Both of our families have, gone through their fair share of difficulties, financially. And so we are able to drop off food to our family and kind of share that bounty with them, and also our friends in our community. So it's pretty special to be able to involve them in that process. And one thing that we've been really, really lucky to have is a really, the strongest group of friends I think I've ever felt. And they've helped us shovel pathways in 100-degree weather, or they've helped us build a greenhouse, put plastic on a greenhouse, or plant tiny little sunflowers. Or there's just, from start to finish, I think we're just so set up with this loving, caring community that believe in us. And also, we've just met so many people through our journey that we've helped inspire and that have inspired us. And it's kind of just this mutual cycle of good that's happening. And yeah, that kind of feeds into the farming community that we're a part of. Because climate change is so real and we're such on the front lines, we have lost some farmers. And it's really unfortunate, whether that climate change just being kind of financially unable to continue farming, or exhaustion, burnout. Those are all really real and realistic things that can happen. So we've met some really beautiful farmers through our experience, and we're definitely trying to corral everyone together and kind of build a more, I would say, collective. It is hard because of the time limits that we have. Like we get home at like 8 or 9, and then we have to wake up at 5. So it's a difficult feat to sort of bring everyone together. But I think, we've had some really cute farm hangs, and every time we hang out with farmers or talk to farmers or text with farmers, we just feel so heard and understood. And that can be like, Sierra and I have lots of friends who are farmers all around the country, and we just always feel this camaraderie, and it is really important for us to continue those relationships. We learn so much from them.
I think like now that we're approaching like our 2-year mark and all that, I think we're feeling more comfortable with our systems and our business. We're definitely like really excited to host a lot more workshops and community gatherings at the farm, just to help bring people together. And like Becks said, we always like, if we don't know something, we have like a little text, we have like text group messages with other farmers in our region. And we're like, hey, how y'all do this?
What cedar sprocket are you using for the arugula this year?
Or like, how the hell y'all deal with these bugs? Like,
it's this bug.
Like we all are just like gripe about that. But yeah, that's something we're definitely looking forward to building more in our community. And just kind of going back when Beck said that our farm was really built by our community. One thing that we did mention when we first started, we both, for the first 8 months, worked other jobs, full-time jobs, and farmed on the weekend and commuted an hour. So we both lived in New Orleans, and the farm's an hour away from New Orleans. So the first 8 months we worked full-time and built the farm on the weekend, and every weekend had a crew of friends coming up to help us, and things that we didn't even know how to do. Like we had to build a walk-in cooler. I never knew how to do that.
No,
Did you?
And we did it together, and we I'm not great with math, but then we had 5 people there, 2-3 people are carpenters, and just kind of like pool all of your resources.
And then we really learn from like, I feel like I'm like, and you probably feel the same way, like I know how to do so much carpentry now. Like, holy shit.
Oh my gosh, plumbing, carpentry, science.
And that's like really learning from other people. And whenever someone comes to our farm, like, and if they're interested, like we're teaching them too, like telling them about what we're doing and things that we're trying out. And so, I feel like our farm has really been built from the ground up with like from community members, and also not only our friends, but like people we've never met before.
Yeah.
Like wanting to like come out and help. And that's really exciting to meet. We met like such an amazing, like just keep on building that community.
Yeah. And honestly, it doesn't surprise me that, of course, the answer we keep hearing over and over again throughout whoever we interview is we really have to focus on nurturing our relationships and our communities, skill sharing. I'm hearing all of that. And so like that makes my heart thrilled. That makes my heart absolutely thrilled. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I can understand why it's a common theme. When you think about how much of the world is in upheaval and how anxiety and depression and, mental health, all of it is so rife within communities, and especially in the South being like so entrenched in oil and gas and corrupt politicians and just climate change, we really need each other. And we've really realized that we need each other. We need to support people that are from Louisiana. We need to support people that are coming back to Louisiana. We need to support Black and brown people. We need to see through the terrible stuff that is the politics here and just create an alternate system of self-sufficiency. And I think that we're getting there.
Yeah, I would definitely say me and Becks talk about this a lot, because growing up here, and I'm sure other people in the South have the same experience, you're told a lot of negative things about Louisiana. You're polluted and, you're not going to exist in this many years and you're losing this much, this much land every whatever minute or whatever. That's engraved into our brains, from when we're little babies. And so growing up in this world, world of like negativity and loss and tragedy and all this stuff, it's like really like, no wonder why a lot of people leave. Like a lot of my friends growing up are like, I can't wait to get out of here. Like, cause there's no opportunity here if you don't go into like tourism or oil and gas. And that's like really like, that's a really sad thing to like feel and to feel growing up like your whole life. And so I feel like for us starting the farm is like changing that, like even the language around that, like instead of like, what are we losing? Like, what can we gain? Like, what would it look like to have a prosperous life here? Like, what would it look like? Joyful life here. And all this crazy stuff is happening in the world. It's like happening in our climate and is like really real and like really hard and messed up. And like, we're definitely feeling that too. But then it's like also like, how can we like really sink our roots deep into this land and like continue like traditions that our ancestors have been like hurricanes existed like 1,000 years ago or whatever it was, like when our ancestors were here. Like that's not a new phenomena. And I think that just like trying to, just bring a more positive light to that. And instead of like telling kids you're losing like all this land, how can we teach them and tell them like how to like set your roots deep, how to plant seeds, like how to invest in our community. Not even just like on an ecological level, but like in people. And so I think that's kind of why, a big reason why we farm. And helps us get through the hard days for sure.
Wow, y'all are moving right into the next segment. Y'all did it so smoothly. Thank you. So, of course, with all the hard work we're putting into towards combating climate change and creating sustainable living and whatnot, the list goes on. And especially with everything we do here in the South, just because as residents of the South, we think it's the hardest. And there's proof, there's data, there's everything to prove that it is one of the hardest things to combat here in the South. What gives y'all hope to keep going, to keep trying to do what we do in our everyday lives? What gives you hope?
And also, any final words y'all want to put in, go ahead.
Yeah, what gives us hope? That we're actually doing it. Like Sierra opened with, there's a lot of people that will tell you that you can't farm here and that it's not possible. And you hear it from farmers. When Sierra and I first started, and even before, I have a really dear friend, shout out to Tabisa in Portland. She was my farm partner in Minnesota, and she was like, don't ever start a farm. I know you're going back to Louisiana, but don't get any crazy ideas. Don't do it. A big warning. And we've gotten that from like elders here that, it's going to be hard and I don't know if you can do it. And you might not want to grow this, that, and this. But we're doing it, and not to kind of like shove it in their face, but just like, hey, no, that's not exactly correct. Like this is possible. And anyone can do it. One of my favorite moments, which I love talking to people at the farmers market about, like growing things. I think there's a really big misconception about whether people can grow things or not, and whether you can have something in your own space. And one common thing is people will come up and say, well, I tried to do this, but I'm just terrible at growing something. I don't have a green thumb. I kill everything. And I guess it's helpful for us to tell them, like, we also do that, and you can't give up, like, and you can do it. And a green thumb is not something that's real. It's about the desire and the passion and the willingness to fail, the hope. Like, this is kind of what it is. And once you finally do grow something and it's beautiful and you eat it and you taste it and you share it, that's kind of where that light comes from. And we feel that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like a lot of our days, like when we wake up really early in the morning, it's like, I don't really want to do this. we both get to the farm at like 6 a.m. We look at each other. We're like, nah, bro, not today. Not today.
Not today.
But then you know, like the other part of it is just like I couldn't even imagine anything else I would be doing right now.
Like we slice open a yellow melon and it's the color of a highlighter and it's the juiciest thing we've ever tasted. And then we go get to bring it to a farmer's market and that person's like, a yellow melon? Like my brother was like, why is this melon yellow? Yeah. I was like, listen, bro, it's because the seed is, you know.
Like a lot of melons used to be yellow back in the day, but now we only want the seedless ones and, you know. But I think like one thing I'm excited about right now is like the fall season coming up. And it's like that idea that like kind of what Becks was going back to is like you can mess up a lot. It's like there's always another beginning. Like there's always another moment to like learn and try again. And like we have failures all the time and you know, that are really hard and like sometimes make us cry because you know, we put a lot of work and time, like months. Like, farming is not just like, you know, you do something and you see the return in a week. You see the return 3 months later. You hope you see the return 3 months later. And, you know, even though there's a lot of failures, it's like that coming back the next day and knowing that you're going to be planting another seed or like starting another season or excited about a new crop. Like I love just thinking about like starting seeds and coming to the farm the next day and seeing them sprout. And it's like that euphoric feeling and it just experience, like it really humbles you. And yeah, like Beck said, it's possible for anybody to do that in any small or big way. I wouldn't say like, you know, not everyone needs to go start a production farm for sure. Like you don't need to make money doing this. You can do it because you enjoy it and like start a small garden in your backyard or whatever space you have.
If you love basil and you buy basil, like the little basil plants from Trader Joe's, you can grow your own basil. You can very well do it. And it just takes like a little bit of effort to kind of understand the growing season, and all of that's online and you can talk to other people around you, and it's really possible.
I feel like there's, just going back to the like what keeps us going, like there's so much negativity around like farming and climate change and all this stuff, and especially in our region, you know, because we're just like right there, like in the thick of it. But it's going back to that thought process of like, how can we shift that dynamic? How can we shift that language? How can we actually shift the way our climate is like going, you know? And there's a lot of people who are from here who will say they'll never leave Louisiana. Like they'll, even if we're like sinking, going underwater, whatever, they'll never leave. There's like that mentality. And I would say like, obviously like being forced to leave is a very real thing that we think about and talk about a lot, but it's kind of like, I don't want to give my home. Like, I don't want to give up my family, and I don't want to like, I feel so many beautiful things for this place. Like, and not just in farming, but like, you know, just in general. And I want my kids to grow up with that. Like, I want my family, I want that knowledge, that ancestral knowledge to be passed down. And so just changing that language around, like, instead of what are we losing, is like, how can we gain? What can we gain? Like, what does it look like to be joyful here and to live prosperous here? And that's kind of like what keeps, at least for me, going. And like going back to our name, it's like, it's a calling, you know, it's not something you can really describe. Like, it's not always a smart decision. It's not always going to be like
you're
the
easiest. Not gonna make the most money, and you're not going to get the most sleep, but you're going to affect other people in a positive way.
And yourself.
Yeah.